When a new Final Fantasy game is nearing launch, there's an unsettling feeling in the air. Games take longer to make as development has become more complex, and as a result, you spend more time in the in-between. During these years, you have what feels like boundless time to sit with the last story you were told and the last cast of characters you were introduced to. If that experience leaves a meaningful impression, maybe you play it again. You share what you love about it with friends, what your favorite moments were, what made you happy, what made you sad. These conversations get more in-depth over time. You begin to discover all the nuanced hidden details that only come from getting to take in all that moved you. Watching something that deeply impacted you get old is an unexplainable experience. It's what makes the arrival of its successor so unsettling. The time that passes in between feels long as you experience it, but looking back on it, it feels like a moment that escaped you. Final Fantasy games have this unique property that each of them carry. The individual entries are all so different, but you can tell they belong together. Each one is used as a study for what comes next. Before you know it, it's time to say goodbye to the story and characters that were at the front of your mind for years. Final Fantasy XV came out 7 years ago. A lot has happened in that time. For close to a decade between marketing and actual launch and onward, Noctis has been your protagonist, and in under 10 days, he won't be. It's a long chapter closing and another opening. This new chapter arrives under different circumstances, with Final Fantasy in the best place it's ever been. That passing of the torch between protagonists always births the next wave of people who from that day forward will decide that this is what Final Fantasy is now. Some will go back and see how we ended up here. Others will look to the future. The turbulent development cycles you had heard about for the last 10 years now cease to exist. There's something special about Noctis handing the series to Clive. Clive in Final Fantasy XVI feel like the moment where everything isn't in deep water anymore. Noctis as a protagonist has gone through it in and out of Final Fantasy XV. It was a very long road with many changes and sacrifices made to get to launch. Despite the odds stacked against it, success was still reached. The story got to be told and Ray Chase brought Noctis to life. That perseverance always felt like it set the tone for what was going to come next. If that game and that story can come out that well against all odds, what would happen if a Final Fantasy game was developed without that adversity?
You guys are the best.
Final Fantasy XVI has been a long-awaited game for many years, but not just on the merits or expectations of a number. Naoki Yoshida, since being branded one of the many saviors of the series, has been sought after to lead the franchise into a new era. An era that showcases how dynamic Final Fantasy as an idea can be with the right people involved. Any concern created from the unfortunate development troubles of the past could be escaped by existing in Final Fantasy XIV. It feels distant from it. Having faced and conquered its own adversity, Eorzea now acts as a mark of rare consistency, one that is rarely seen in its genre. The writing was on the wall for where Final Fantasy had to go. Watching the outside of the game narrative play out was as engrossing as the one taking place expansion to expansion. What was certain is that every contingency had to be accounted for. Creative Business Unit 3 has kept their audience very involved in the process of this development. Like 15, they hosted a fan event celebrating the game and sharing any last-minute info they didn't get to in their worldwide marketing campaign. With it came a recognition of the fact that both Platinum Games and the Kingdom Hearts team had contributed in some way to the game's creation. It puts in perspective just how much has gone into making sure that past mistakes don't happen again. Square Enix has a large number of teams they can call on for certain projects. While it's not unusual for studios to share tech, proposing another team develop for the game is a much different approach, but one that can take a single feature from great to unforgettable. These teams are busy. Kingdom Hearts 4 is in full production on what will be their most important release in the series. Even so, Final Fantasy XVI made sense to work on. It feels like the IP as a whole is being treated like something that can't afford a single loss anymore, and at many points it couldn't, down to the creation of the first game and the phrase Final Fantasy. Ever since 7 Remake, they have seemingly figured out how to execute consistently. What better a time to thrive than when the circumstances are no longer dire? The next 12 months will be some of the most important in franchise history, a true showing of if the teams working on various Final Fantasy games can keep up their consistency. Crisis Core just had its rework, 16 is here, Ever Crisis is incoming, and both Rebirth and the inevitable next expansion for 14 are a short wait away. It's something that's worth stopping and taking in. This many games in the series all being produced without compromise of quality is a rare thing. The 35th anniversary celebrations are the gift that keeps on giving. 16's FanFest brought with it a message from Kitase, who is busy with work on Rebirth. A simple message at face value, but one that carries weight. He commends Yoshi P for his efforts on the franchise and suggests fans give 16 a try. Afterwards, Yoshi P reminds players that 7 Rebirth is around the corner and that the idea is to keep fans engaged for the entire year. It's a simple gesture that goes a long way in dispelling a misconception. It is a complimentary act to have these games be out within the same 12 months. There is no competition. Just the best year of Final Fantasy content in decades. When a demo was first suggested to be arriving with ample time before launch to make a decision, it became evident there was a level of confidence brewing behind the scenes that we haven't seen from the series in a long time. Its release has created a type of anticipation and excitement that has completely left the fanbase. Those who were sure the game wasn't for them were able to give it a shot, and the content of the demo has been more than enough to shift the conversation in favor of what looks to be a huge launch. It doesn't just take an all-star team of people to do it, but they did build it, and its results will go on to be one of the series' most collaborative efforts. Final Fantasy games have this unique property that each of them carry. The individual entries are all so different, but you can tell they belong together. Each one is used as a study for what comes next, and what comes next is Final Fantasy XVI.